This is just a quick revision from yesterday and maybe some other things. So I would like you to take a minute individually to read these sentences aloud. It's an individual task. And try and remember, try and think why I would ask you to pronounce, where's the trick or the tricks in the sentence. Okay? Yeah, that was a tricky bit, perhaps. I live in Spain. Okay. What about the second one? Exactly. Probably because you have these two sounds together, so probably it just turns into one. So you probably say, she's small, she's small. Okay, what about the third one? So probably you have a problem there with the initial S here. So how would you say it? You stay. Why don't you stay here? Why don't you stay here? As if this was, the initial S was part of a previous word. Why don't you stay here? Why don't you stay here? Good. The next one? Again, we have the same problem here. Oh, very good. It's like speaking. It's like speaking. That's it. It's like speaking in a secret code. Okay, next one. That's it. Why are you speaking? You speaking all funny? And it's Spanish, so probably get the two sounds together. They speak it in Spain. In Spain. Okay? Okay, if you don't trust me, and you shouldn't, because I'm not a trustworthy person, what we're going to do now, we're going to watch a clip from a TV show. Do you know this show? He said,
Nico. I saw in class.
Okay, do you know the name of the show? It's called Charlie and Lola. They are British kids. So anyway, it's a children's show. So what we're going to do, we're going to watch a clip from one of these shows. The original stories are written by a woman who's now the Children's Laureate poet. So like a very important writer in the UK. And the accents of these kids are very, I think, clear to understand. So, I don't know, nice to hear. Okay? So we're going to watch this clip from Charlie and Lola, and they pronounce the sentences you've just read. Okay? So, I'm going to give you a minute to have a look at these words and try to imagine what we're going to do today. These are just examples of things we're going to discuss. So we're going to do two or three different things today. So can you try and guess what we're going to do? Okay, there are some things like that around, yeah. So yeah, maybe how to pronounce these two letters in spelling. Okay, that's something, yeah, that's number one. Yeah, like in, for example? What words?
Painted.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm going to use a different color. Painted. Here. This one. Okay, yeah, exactly. That's another thing we're going to have a look at. And something else, maybe? Silent is at the end. Maybe I think it's a coincidence here. Yeah, there are a couple. There are 3, in fact. It's just a coincidence. Maybe some other things are a bit more tricky to guess. But anyway, you guessed 2, and you were absolutely right.
Do you have the middle of the room? Because we saw it's going to say football.
Yeah.
Kate is in the middle. Or
Yeah.
this.
Could be. You were right about this. Yeah, about these bits. Okay, yeah, so just for you to, have a broad idea of what we're going to do. If you remember the very first day, I said, if you leave this course with just 2, 3 ideas in your mind, this should be one of them, okay? So, aspiration. So, this is probably going to make a difference in the way you pronounce things, and probably you do already, just for you to make sure that you do it, or why you do it, probably. Have you noticed when Charlie was speaking Spanish and he was trying to, do the basic things, he said, "Hola, ¿qué?" And he didn't say, "¿Qué tal?" This is how we would pronounce it in Spanish. He said, "Hola, ¿qué tal?" Yeah? And when we try to imitate, foreign people speaking Spanish, many times we do these things. We say, "¿Qué tal?" And instinctively, we add an aspiration. And the reason we do it when we try to imitate foreigners speaking Spanish is because in English, for example, you do have an aspiration we don't use in Spanish. And you do have to use it in English, okay? So, the rule says that there is a certain degree of aspiration, an appreciable, noticeable degree of aspiration associated with these 3 sounds. When you pronounce p, t, k, these sounds at the beginning of stressed syllables. It doesn't have to be the first syllable in the word. It has to be the beginning of stressed syllables. Okay? For example, Alison, thank you for coming. How would you pronounce this one here?
P.
Yeah? This one?
T.
Can you hear? T. T. And?
Q.
Yeah? It's not ku, it's k, ku. So, a little bit of aspiration. Yeah? Typically with this sound is really, really noticeable, but with the others as well, there's a little bit of aspiration. Okay? There's a difference, and I'm going to ask you to take your handouts. For example, can you take your handouts like this? Just hold it in the air with one finger. Okay, can you do it yourself? Yeah, everyone. Okay. In Spanish, si vamos a la panadería, normalmente en la panadería se compra. And we're going to say in Spanish. En la panadería se compra pan. Okay, can you pronounce pan in Spanish? Pan, 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 pan. Okay, is the sheet moving?
No.
No, because there's no aspiration. Okay, now in English. If you want to fry something, what utensil do you need? What kitchen utensil? Sauce. Pan. Is your sheet moving? It should. Maybe some people will, send the sheet all the way outside. But anyway, there should be a little aspiration when you pronounce these sounds. When they are at the beginning of stressed syllables. If they are not in stressed syllables, then it doesn't have to be. Okay? In case you don't trust me, that's fair enough. In case you don't trust Alison either, you remember the alpha blocks, the show we watched, I think on the very first day or the second day probably. Okay, I told you every character is a different sound. So in this case, we're going to watch a little clip from this particular character. Yeah? So you can hear the aspiration this character has. Okay?
Very popular.
Let's see if you can notice the difference between these minimal pairs. When you make the aspiration, you have a different sound at the beginning. For example, how would you pronounce this, everyone? Kate. And how would you pronounce this? Gate. Gate. What you have in here is the voiceless consonant. And this is the voiced, exactly the same, but voiced. You articulate it in the same place in your mouth, but it's voiced. So, the voiced consonants do not have an aspiration. It's only the voiceless ones. The k, t, p. But there's no aspiration here. So we say Kate, we say gate. Okay? For example, we say pill, but we say bill. Okay? We say pack, we say back. Okay? So when you have the voiced consonant, there's no aspiration. Yes. Okay? Okay, and now, as we were saying yesterday, if you have a look at your handouts or on the screen, you have some sentences that contain these sounds, those aspirated sounds. You should see it on the handout. The sounds you need to show some aspiration on are in bold or in orange in here. Okay, so pronounce them, read them aloud. Please don't be afraid or scared or anything. Okay, read them aloud and try to have some aspiration precisely on those sounds that I have written in bold. Okay. The examples I'm giving here are not just one syllable words, they have two or more syllables. But again, you do have to show aspiration because appear at the beginning of the stressed syllable. Okay? So for example, everyone, how would you say the first word? Okay, the word is report. Report. It's not at the beginning of a word, but it is at the beginning of a stressed syllable. So there is aspiration. Report. 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 The second one is obtain. Obtain. Yeah, so again, obtain. The third one would be become. And the very last one? Attack. Okay, that's it. Very good. To do now, this section might be a bit more, I don't know, tricky, or maybe not. Again, for some of the things we're going to discuss now, there are rules, like the ones I gave you yesterday for plurals and present simple, etc. So we can apply some rules and some logic to them. So it's just a question of memory, perhaps. Okay? So we're going to deal with 4 different sounds. The first 2 sounds, I think, are very obvious. Yeah, because they are basically the same as in Spanish. Yeah, to pronounce the first 2 sounds, what we use basically is our teeth. Yeah, they're called dental sounds because we use our teeth. Yeah, these are dental sounds. Yeah, and the difference between the first one and the second one, can you guess? What's the difference between this and this? Exactly. So, you pronounce them exactly in the same place against your teeth, but This is the voiceless version. There's no vibration, the throat, and this is the voiced one. Okay? As we have just mentioned, many times when you pronounce this particular sound, if it's at the beginning of a stressed syllable, it will have some aspiration. This is what we've just discussed. Okay? Not in this case. Okay? Good. What about these two? These sounds are, well, we do have one in Spanish, not the other. Can you guess which is the one we do have in Spanish? Exactly. The very last sound is exactly the same sound as we have in Spanish when we say things like Zaragoza, Zagal, something like that. Yeah. Okay. These two sounds are what we call interdental sounds. What does it mean? We're going to use our teeth again, but there's a bit of space and our tongue gets in the middle. And this is exactly what we do when we pronounce Zaragoza. Okay? When we make this sound, think. Yeah? When you say this, you have your teeth, the tongue is in between. Does it vibrate? No. No, not in this case. This is the voiceless sound. And can you imagine, this one here is going to be exactly the same. You're going to pronounce it in the same place in your mouth, but it's going to be voiced. So you have to pronounce the sound you already know, but voiced. Okay?
But in the second letter,
Yeah.
or sound.
Yeah. For example, the one for door, you mean? Or
Could you pronounce one?
Okay. Okay, for example, the very first sound is T. T. Okay? This one would be the one you're using, door. Door. Open the door. Yeah? This one, I'm going to the very last one, is the one you use when you say things like things, think, thanks. Okay? And this is the one you use when you say things like these, the, brother. You don't say brother. I can't say sorry. You don't say brother. Say brother. It's not. These two are exactly the same. They're going to vibrate, but this stops in your teeth. This is a bit more open. You open it just a little bit so your tongue can get in between. So, pronouncing, the first word does not exist between pronouncing this or this. Obviously, this is not standard pronunciation. This could be Spanish or, I don't know, Jamaican maybe, or something like that, yeah? So it's not this is my house, no. Rather, this is my home, this is my, these, the, okay? Good, so that's it. This is what we're going to do now, okay? Now, on how to pronounce this little ending that appears, everywhere. And probably you pronounce it perfectly fine already. It's just in case, and just for you to, have a systematic approach on why you say one thing or the other. Okay? So, 97% of cases are going to fall into this category. No, come on, 99% of cases. And then just the 1% would be exceptions. But anyway, these are the cases we're going to apply the rule to. Okay? If you remember yesterday when we talked about, plurals and the present simple, we talked about how the last sound you pronounce in the basic form is going to have an influence on the way you pronounce the ending. So something similar is going to happen here. Okay, for example, if you have a verb that ends in a voiceless consonant, if the last sound you pronounce in a verb is voiceless, no vibration here, then you're going to pronounce the ed ending with the voiceless version, which is going to be t. Okay? And it just makes sense. Voiceless with voiceless. Again, because by contact, it all gets together. For example, yeah. You walk. Yesterday, I walked. Okay? Because the last sound you pronounce is voiceless, you add a voiceless pronunciation as well. Walked. Yeah? This doesn't apply when the last sound you pronounce in the infinitive is a T. And you will see why, and probably you can guess why. Because
we want to repeat the sound.
we don't want to spit on people, yeah? We are nice people and we don't want to say like a submachine gun or something like no. So there's an option later, okay? Same thing happens if the infinitive, if the root of a verb ends either in a voiced consonant or in a vowel, because it's a voiced, really voiced sound. So for example, I play, yesterday I played. So this would be the infinitive, play. So you just add d, yeah, the voiced version. Or for example, you talk about a can, or the verb to can, to put in a can. So you talk about canned food. Forget about spelling. In pronunciation, this is the last sound you make. So, to can, canned food. Canned. Because the last sound you make, which is this one, it vibrates. So what do you add to pronounce the past simple tense is the voiced version. Are you okay? Are you following?
Yes.
Yes, everyone?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So, the only exceptions we have to make to this rule is when the last sound you make in the infinitive is either a T instead of T or D. Because as I say, we can't have the two sounds together. It would be terrible to pronounce. So in order to be able to pronounce the word, there's an E added before. Okay, so for example, pat on the back. Oh, well done. Yeah. Oh, Natalia, well done. So you pat someone on the back. Yeah. If you say it in the past, so she patted. Yeah. Most people say patted, because sometimes this becomes a sort of a sound. Some people say patted. But anyway, the phoneme is the same. Okay? So this could be patted, or for example, from sound. Oh, it sounds familiar. It sounded familiar. Okay? you were asking me for, obviously. For example, you have a verb like, okay, the infinitive would be mark. This is the last sound you pronounce. In the past could be marked. Yeah. If you think of spelling, it might be tricky. If you think of how you write the sounds, marked. This is what you have. For example, people nowadays don't fax many things, but anyway, just for the sake of pronunciation. Yesterday, I faxed you the information or whatever. I faxed. Yeah? Or for example, every morning I get dressed. Yeah? Because the last sound is voiceless. So you add the voiceless way of pronouncing the past. Okay? We're going to have a look at some examples with the voiced version. For example, oh, I haven't seen my nephew for a long time, so I hagged him. Hagged. What do you go? Hagged.
For me, it's only to do that sound.
To get these two sounds together.
Yes. The D for me is more difficult than the T or the G. That D.
Yeah.
For making
this is easy. Yeah.
For me, love is the same. Love. I have loved. For making that D sound.
Yeah. Love.
That is here, and for me it's more complicated.
It's just by vibrating it. Loved.
Yes.
Loved.
And in fact, my throat.
This road hurts.
My throat that suffer a little bit with that sound.
Yeah, maybe because your vocal cords have to vibrate a bit. So, but anyway, imagine you're saying bye-bye to your ex-partner. You say, I'm so sorry, I really loved you. Not anymore, but back then, I really loved you. Okay? Or for example, if you make a long verb, oh, you should have stayed. Sorry, you should have stayed. You should have stayed. You should have stayed. You should have stayed. Okay? And then just for you to see some examples where you need to include this vowel in the middle, wherever. For example, we painted. It depended on other people. It didn't depend on me. It depended on, yeah. For example, we waited for an hour. We waited for 2 days. Waited or waited. It depends on preference. Okay? She asked me a question and I answered. Okay? Laura, how would you pronounce the second one?
He congratulated me on my promotion.
Okay, he congratulated me on my promotion. Congratulated. Okay? And Carmen, can you pronounce the last one?
They've studied all night long.
Yes, they've studied all night long. Yeah. This is a bit of grammar and a bit of pronunciation as well. Okay, don't worry, it's not that. No, don't worry.
I was
don't worry.
reading when I started seeing a lot of consonants together.
No, don't worry. Okay, we've been discussing the way you pronounce past simple tenses and past participles. In regular verbs, this is the way you pronounce them. Okay, there's also in English something grammarians called pseudo-participles, which means false participles. Okay? Because these verbs do not exist. So that's why they are false. Okay? But sometimes, let me give you an example. We could say things like, he's a green-eyed boy. She's a long-haired girl. Okay. Rest, please.
A green-eyed boy, long-haired girl, bad-tempered boss, red face, absent-minded, broad-minded person,
Yeah.
fair-headed child, tight-fisted aunt.
We're going to pronounce all these pseudo participles, all these false participles are going to be pronounced exactly in the same way you would pronounce normal verbs in the past, normal participles. So nothing happens here. Just for you to remember that these exist and you apply exactly the same rules of pronunciation. No problems here. Okay? But these are adjectives. Different kinds of adjectives with these endings. Okay, sometimes you can say that this girl, you say, she has blue eyes. Yes? Or you could say, she's a
Blue-eyed.
you could say she's blue-eyed or she's a blue-eyed girl. Both would be okay. Okay? And you know this already, probably, yes. It's called pseudo-participles, these kinds of adjectives. Why? Because the verb, this is not a verb, it's a part of a body, yeah? But they are turned into fake verbs, into fake participles, just to create this adjective, okay? So this is what we're going to see some examples of. However, there are in English some other adjectives, and this is the 1% I was referring to at the beginning. These are the exceptions. These are adjectives that apparently, you know, they end in ed, so they should have the same, you should apply the same rules of pronunciation, but unfortunately, no. You have to pronounce all of these adjectives I'm describing here with this ending. You're always going to say id. When these are adjectives, because some of these might be verbs as well.
Is a question of grammar for making the difference?
Yeah. So it has to do with these words being adjectives. And the example, the most telling example would be this one here. When you use the verb learn, so you know the verb learn can be regular or irregular. Some people might say, I have learned. Some people might say, I have learned. And both are accepted, both are okay. However, when you want to use this adjective, okay, this is C1, C2 maybe, okay, this is really, really sophisticated. But in some contexts, for example, if you want to say that a person knows a lot of things, he or she is really expert, you could say that he or she is a learned person. This is an adjective, it's a special adjective to say that this person is really an expert on something, that they know lots of things about something, yeah? Or for example, if you like watching, for example, films about judges and trials, you know, in courtrooms, yeah, when there's a trial, you know, typically you have the defense lawyer, you have the prosecution lawyer, and when they talk to each other, they say, my learned colleague, say, yeah, my rival here in this case, but they would use expressions like my learned colleague, my learned friend, you know, so this is not one of these words you're going to use every single day in conversation, just for you to know, okay? So learned in this particular context as an adjective could be learned, okay? But for example, this one here, beloved. In this case, because it's the adjective, you would have to say beloved. For example, if you go to church and you go to mass, the priest says, oh, for example, at a wedding, dearly beloved, we are gathered here together to join this man and this woman in matrimony. Something like, queridos hermanos, so something like that. So it would be something like, dearly beloved, or my beloved children. Has to do with loving someone. Yeah? So, for example, in this expression, you would say beloved, yeah, or blessed. Again, I'm sorry, I sound so religious today. It's not my intention. Do you know the meaning of blessed? Well, exactly. When someone sneezes, you say bless you, yeah, as if something terrible was going to happen to you and you were going to die or something. So, blessed people are very good people that the Lord is going to give their blessings upon, yeah. And so, for example, in Catholic and in Christian church, there's something called blessed are las bienaventuranzas. Bienaventurados serán los no sé quién, o benditos. Yeah, so this would be blessed. Blessed, for example. You know this one? Naked. Naked. When is someone naked?
No clothes. No.
Exactly, when they're wearing no clothes. Yeah? Or something can be sacred. I'm so sorry again, religious stuff. I'm sorry, I apologize. But anyway, you have a list of adjectives. There are not very many, but just for you to know. Probably the ones you need to remember, maybe beloved, because it might appear as in, it's a term of endearment or something like that. Naked, definitely. I don't know, sacred. And then this one just because it makes the contrast with the verb, okay? But it doesn't appear every single day in conversation. Just for you to know these things happen, okay? Everything together. We have all the possible examples, regular verbs, participles, pseudo-participles, and some of these strange adjectives mixed together in these sentences. So I'm going to ask you to read these sentences first in your own minds and try and guess how you would pronounce the words that I have in italics here. Yeah. Okay, so try and guess how you would pronounce them. Okay? In the middle of a word is silent. English has millions of silent words, letters. Letters you have to write in spelling, but you never pronounce. And T might be one of these cases in the middle of a word. So you have some words, like, for example, like when you are on an airplane, you say, fasten your seat belts. For example, fasten. Yeah. For example, you listen. You don't pronounce the T in the middle. When you have a baby and you want the baby to become part of a church, you christen the baby, or there's the christening. Rich people, noblemen live in a castle, and in Scotland there are lots of castles. Yeah. There's a sport that is, you wrestle. The sport is wrestling. Yeah. What do? Whistle. Yeah, you whistle. At Christmas, some people, have some mistletoe, and what happens if you exactly? You have to kiss the person you're close to when you walk down past the mistletoe. When you think of cities, very busy cities like, I don't know, New York, London, whatever, you talk, there's lots of activity, and you talk about the hustle and bustle of a city. Lots of things going on, lots of activity, yeah, the hustle and bustle. And you talk about, for example, when you wash your clothes, you need to use softener to make them nice and, okay? And, as we said the other day, in this particular word, it's totally up to you if you want to say often or often. Up to you, because both pronunciations are okay and are admitted, and are possible, okay? Maybe more conservative options would say often, and more innovative options might say often. pronouncing the T again, but totally up to you. In English, when they take words from other languages, they try and pronounce them, the best way they can, okay? So, don't think of words taken from French in the Middle Ages. Think of words taken from French recently, in the last maybe 200 years. So this is the way they pronounce T in those particular words that very conspicuously, very easily to see, come from French. Sophisticated things like, okay, at the end, you have, in these words, you have these two letters at the end, okay, but you don't pronounce the T. You're always going to pronounce, the English version is going to be the ballet, a buffet. Okay, it's not the same word we use in Spanish when we say Isabel Preisler vive en un chalet. No, it's a special kind of house, like the Switzerland houses, etc. Yeah, probably. So think of mountains, think of Switzerland, but that pronunciation would be chalet. This is more frequent, probably. A bunch of flowers can be a bouquet. Come on, that's much more sophisticated than saying a bunch of flowers. No, a bouquet. Yeah, but you say bouquet. And you may go to this show called the cabaret. If you listen to Liza Minnelli's song in the film Cabaret, you can hear it perfectly. Come to the cabaret. Life is a cabaret. So it's the same pronunciation for all of these words, taken from French, as I say, more or less recently. Okay. You know that American English tends to pronounce the T in the middle in a different way than standard British English ones. And what they call, let's say, the official name for this would be a flap R. And you know exactly what I'm referring to. I'm thinking when you have T's in between, in the middle of words, when, for example, a British standard speaker would say something like matter or better, they would say things like mother, better, Betty, university. So a kind of R. It's not exactly an R, but it's a kind of flap R, like rolling the R more or less. So it could be something as I say, matter, better, Betty, university, gravity, 30, dirty. Exactly, it's much more similar to an R than a T. It's exactly that. That's why if you're interested in knowing, because your personal option is to speak American English, and that would be fair enough. I have nothing against it, obviously. So if you want to really learn how to pronounce this sound in the middle of a word, you can watch this video. It's an American teacher explaining how to pronounce, how to make this sound, like better, gravity, university, etc. If you want to practice a bit, okay? On something called glottal stops. The glottis is a part of our, throat. Okay, it's in between here. It's the glottis. Anyway, so you do this sound. You make this sound when your glottis stops the air. There's a flow of air when you make a sound. So the glottis at some moment stops. There's the glottis here. Yeah. So it stops. There's no air. So it's just stopping the air. Anyway. Is it educated? No. This is non-standard pronunciation. It tends to be associated with maybe working class speeches or working class accents, whatever. So, as I say, don't. If you're delivering an academic paper, please don't do it. Okay, just for you to know they exist. In a word like this, you have this sound in the middle of a word, in between vowels. So, if you spoke standard English, standard British English, how would you pronounce this word? British. Okay, and we talk about the British Council all the time, and British blah blah blah, whatever. If you were American, how would you pronounce it? British, British, with this sort of flap R probably, British. Okay. If you were British and you used these glottal stops, you could probably say something like British. British. No, there's as if you said nothing in between. There's you sort of stop in the middle of a word. British, British. And this is perhaps more interesting because it applies to standard pronunciation. What we're going to have a look at now is the way these two letters in spelling can be pronounced, because you have different ways of pronouncing this spelling. So we're going to start with examples when this is pronounced as a t. Yeah. In words such as, for example, it's not it's Anthony. Okay?
And then Anthony is because...
Just because, no, it's Anthony. Esther, in this case. Teresa. Have you, if you listen to the radio and you can hear about information about Theresa May, the Prime Minister now in the UK, Theresa May. Okay? You talk about Thomas, or you talk about the river Thames, and you talk about this plant, thyme, which is for cooking, like rosemary and thyme. Okay? But Anthony, Esther, Teresa, Thomas, and the Thames. Okay? Okay, different possibilities now. When you have this spelling, you can also pronounce it as, sometimes like the sound in Spanish, like in Zaragoza, cierto, or like this sound we talked about yesterday, which is the interdental sound. You're using the same position in your mouth for both these sounds. As I say, this is the one you use when you say Zaragoza in Spanish. Exactly the same, okay? But this is voiceless. Hello? No, it's okay. This is voiceless, and this is exactly the same, but it's the voiced counterpart. So it's... It's not that continuous, you want to make it for a split second. But your tongue is in between your teeth. That's the idea, okay? In some particular contexts, it's really typical to find this particular sound. Outside those, it's not that popular. Okay? But in those particular words which come in your everyday language over and over again, you do have this sound. For example, when you pronounce the article, how would you pronounce it? The. Okay? The things, the love, the. Yeah? In all those words like they, them, theirs, it's not they, it's they, them, theirs. Okay? When you make a comparison, this is better than, it's not than, it's than. It's not very easy, though. It's not very easy, though. Or when you make the sentence, although, though, yeah? It's neither here nor there. When you use demonstratives such as this, that, these, and those, yeah? Thus, for example, the same. You have it in this word, rather, or in those words we mentioned the other day, either, neither. Okay, as I say, the typical confusion for Spanish speakers is to use this sound instead. No. Yeah. Also, in some of the words, which content words, because the previous ones were grammatical words, let's say. But in content words, such as, for example, together, mother, father, brother, bother. Oh, don't bother me. Oh, don't bother, no. Bother. The weather. Talk about the weather. Or other, another. Yeah? In fact, in very old times, this used to be a letter in Old English. So all these very old words that come from those times somehow retain that. However, when you have these letters maybe coming from Latin, so in this case, they decide to pronounce it with the Spanish sound. So, for example, you could talk about a cathedral. The animal would be panther. You talk about a method or about mathematics or maths. Okay? You can say both. Okay, so this is the summary. I'm trying to make things simple. I don't know if I'm complicating things even more or if it simplifies things. Anyway, so when you have, this is what we have just said. When you have these two letters at the beginning of a word, if they are grammatical words such as the, this, that, than, though, this kind of function words, so they will be pronounced with the sound we don't have in Spanish, with the interdental voiced sound. This, that, the, though, than. But if they are content words like things, think, thank, you will pronounce them with the Spanish sound, with the voiceless one. Think, thank. Think about it. Oh, thank you very much. But if it's a grammatical word, such as this, the, then it's the. Okay? If, however, you have this in the middle of a word, if the origin is Anglo-Saxon, like when you say brother or mother, you will pronounce it with the voiced one. But if it's a foreign origin, Latin probably, you talk about a cathedral. Or you talk about mathematics. Okay? Finally, when you have this spelling at the very end of a word, it tends to be pronounced with the sound, the voiceless sound. However, when you have this spelling and the last letter in spelling is an E, it tends to have this pronunciation, the voiced one. That's why, for example, you talk about bathe, loathe, but you talk about teeth or bath. Okay, the pronunciation of this one would be tired, tired, tired. Okay, I'm so tired. Yeah? If you're more than tired, hello, you are, yeah. Be careful with that. Exhausted, 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 exhausted. That's, be careful with this one here, okay? Exhausted. And, after 2 minutes with me, with my classes, you are? Okay, imagine you felt like that. You feel bored, bored. You pronounce this word exactly the same as you would pronounce bored. It's exactly the same pronunciation. They're homophones. Bored. Okay? So, as a brief summary of what we've discussed in this session, remember, when you have these sounds at the beginning of a stressed syllable, they have a noticeable degree of aspiration, such as when you say top, tie, tights, you say pan or pie, or when you say cake or cup. We've discussed some rules on how to pronounce this ending, which is typically associated with the past simple, regular past simple form of verbs or the past participle of regular verbs. And this is what you're going to use in, like 97% of cases or something like that. There are some small exceptions to these special adjectives such as naked or learned, something like that. But basically you follow the rule we discussed here. That's why, for example, when you have, when the last sound in a verb is something voiced, either a vowel, a diphthong, or a voiced consonant, such as play, then the ending will be pronounced with the voiced dental sound, with a d, played, played. Or when you have a voiced consonant, as this, say open, opened. If the last sound in a verb is a voiceless sound, like k, then what you have, just by contact, is the voiceless version. So you'd say asked, asked. Only if you have a d or a t as the last sound in the verb, then you would have to say minded, minded, or decided, or decided. Okay, but only in those cases if the last sound is a d or a t. Other than that, this is what you have to use.